The wind scraped through the narrow alleyways of Tucson, Arizona, carrying with it the bone-dry scent of dust and something darker, something metallic and sharp. Under the fractured glow of flickering street lamps, a German shepherd dragged his broken body forward. His ribs protruded through matted fur, one ear hung at a twisted angle, and blood trailed behind him like a red thread, unravelling a story no one had asked to hear. His eyes, though clouded and weary, still held a flicker of fight, not for vengeance, but for survival. He had no collar that mattered, no name that anyone had cared to speak, only scars. But something had happened in that alley. Not a fight, not a struggle, an execution, and this dog had lived through it. Captain Elias Monroe didn't plan to walk that path that night. The session had run long, and Dr. Klein had pushed him harder than usual. Visualization therapy, memory drills, psychological landmines disguised as healing. The kind of exercises that left him sweat-soaked and hollow. He stepped off the curb near Grant Road, jacket slung over one shoulder, his fingers twitching around the leather strap of his duffel bag. Every sound in the city felt sharper in the cold. The creak of a neon sign above a shuttered pawn shop, the buzz of a flickering bulb, the distant bark of a dog that didn't sound right. He was 33. Tall, broad-shouldered, sun-browned skin and a hard jaw edged with stubble. His steel-grey eyes were the sort that never stopped scanning, even when there was nothing to scan. A decade in the Marines did that to a man. 12 years of service ended in an instant by an IED in Fallujah. The blast stole part of his memory and gave him the kind of panic attacks that hit like sudden thunderstorms, no warning, just impact. He didn't talk about those nights anymore. Nobody asked. As he passed an alley tucked between a boarded-up video rental store and a liquor shop, he heard it. One sharp bark, then a grunt, then another bark, this one cut short, like the air had been knocked out of it. Elias froze. He didn't know why he moved toward the sound. Maybe instinct, maybe memory. He stepped into the narrow corridor, glass crunching underfoot, urine thick in the air. The darkness wrapped around him like a blanket made of old nightmares. Then he saw it. A man, if that word still applied, stood with one leg raised, ready to strike. Thin and wiry, the type of lean that comes from hunger and hate. Tattered green coat, steel-toed boots, a beanie pulled low over stringy hair. His target lay crumpled on the ground. A German shepherd. A breathing corpse. The dog's fur was dull and filthy. Its body was trembling. One of its legs twitched every few seconds. Muscle memory or fear, it was hard to say. Elias watched as the dog tried to rise, only to be kicked back down. A whimper escaped its muzzle, small and cracked like a branch breaking under pressure. That was the moment Elias stopped thinking. He didn't remember the sprint, didn't register the scream, only felt his shoulder slam into the attacker's chest, sending him flying into a stack of plastic milk crates that exploded across the alley in a crash of sound and confusion. The man scrambled up, dazed but furious. "You don't know what this is, man," he spat. Elias didn't move. His body was already between the man and the dog, arms spread, breath steaming from his mouth like smoke from a fired gun. The attacker hesitated. Somewhere down the block, voices began to stir. The city, quiet until now, was waking up to the violence. The man backed away, hissing. "This ain't over." Then he vanished into the shadows like a rat slipping into a drain. The moment he disappeared, Elias dropped to one knee beside the dog. His hands shook, not from fear but memory. Somewhere deep in his mind, another image threatened to rise. Sand, fire, a canine partner who never came back. He pushed it down. This one was alive, barely. "You're safe now, buddy," he whispered, his voice splintering at the edges. The dog blinked slowly. One eye swollen shut, the other focused and clear, watching. A shredded collar hung loosely around his neck, the colour faded from red to a ghostly pink. No tags, no clue of who he had been. Elias ran a hand gently along the animal's side, checking for breaks. The ribs felt battered, one leg likely fractured. His fingers came away bloody. Only then did he notice the gash on his own forearm, probably from when he had shoved the attacker. He ignored it. "I'm not leaving you here," he said, sliding his duffel onto his back. With practiced care, he slipped both arms under the dog's weight and lifted. His shoulder screamed in protest, the old injury from Fallujah sparking white-hot behind his eyes. Still, he carried the animal like a wounded soldier. 3 blocks away, the Copper Canyon Vet Clinic waited. an all-night operation run by an old vet and staffed by misfit volunteers. The bell above the door chimed as he pushed through. "I need help," his voice cut through the sterile light. A teenager appeared from the back, lanky, freckled, eyes wide beneath a mop of curly auburn hair. His oversized hoodie was stained with iodine and ink. His name tag, scribbled in marker on masking tape, read Juno. "Bring him this way," Juno said, moving fast. They stepped into a back room that smelled of antiseptic and towels. Elias laid the dog down gently. Caught someone beating him in an alley. Didn't have time for introductions. Juno's jaw clenched. "You're lucky you got to him in time. Or maybe he's lucky he got you." He moved with quiet precision, checking vitals, probing for injuries. His hands, though young and thin, didn't shake. Not anymore. "What's your name?" Juno asked, not looking up. "Captain Elias Monroe. Retired." Juno didn't ask retired from what. He didn't need to. The way Elias stood said everything. "Well, Captain Monroe," Juno said with a half-smile, "you just saved someone's best friend." Elias didn't smile back. His hand hovered over the dog's side, feeling the shallow rise and fall of breath. "He doesn't have a name," he murmured. "Then give him one," Juno said simply. Elias looked down at the battered shepherd, who blinked once, still alert, still holding on. "Valor," Elias said. "His name's Valor." Morning came without ceremony. Tucson's sky turned pale grey with streaks of dust floating above the city like old breath held too long. Inside the Copper Canyon Vet Clinic, the fluorescent lights buzzed softly, casting a sterile glow over tile floors worn smooth by years of hurried footsteps. The air smelled of antiseptic and quiet urgency. Elias Monroe hadn't gone home. Instead, he stayed, stationed like a watchman in the corner of the treatment room, seated in a metal chair too small for his broad frame. His old duffel rested at his feet, scuffed and battered like him. His eyes, rimmed in sleepless fatigue, never strayed far from the exam table. There, swaddled in clean towels and silent sedation, lay Valor. The German shepherd's chest rose in slow, measured beats, 2 fractured ribs, minor internal bleeding, and a possible concussion. The X-rays showed the damage clearly. A fresh wrap hugged his torso, anchored in place by the hands of a woman who moved like a machine but saw with a heart unbroken by time. Dr. Harriet Geller was in her late 60s, tall and angular, with silver hair wound into a clip at the back of her neck. Her fingers were stiff with arthritis, but her movements were sharp, sure. She didn't waste words, rarely spoke in full sentences. But the moment she examined Valor, something in her gaze shifted. "He's a survivor," she'd said softly, adjusting her stethoscope with ritualistic grace. "Old injuries too, scar tissue, back legs, past breaks, no microchip." She hadn't asked Elias how he found him. She didn't need to. Dogs like Valor didn't just appear, they escaped. Now, hours later, Elias sat motionless, his left hand lightly bandaged where blood had soaked through the night before. But his attention wasn't on himself. It was on Valor, on the silent communication that passed between them like static under the skin. There was no bark, no whimper, no wag, just breath, just presence. But his mind was already slipping, spooling backward through a corridor of memory he rarely allowed himself to walk. Sandstorms, gunfire, the smell of copper and cordite, and a dog that didn't make it back. Titan. He'd been younger, bigger, pure black with eyes like amber fire. Elias had worked with him during his second deployment, bomb detection, perimeter patrol, nightmares. Titan wasn't just a tool, he was a buffer, a shield between Elias and the worst of himself. It was Titan who dragged Elias from the vehicle after the explosion, and it was Titan who died shielding him from the worst of the blast. Elias had learned to walk again, but he had never allowed himself to remember Titan too clearly. Until now. Until Valor, who didn't look like him but carried the same quiet gravity. The same steadiness behind the pain. A sound broke the room's stillness. Footsteps down the hall, confident and familiar. Elias knew the rhythm before the door opened. When it did, it revealed a woman he hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. Officer Nia West stepped into the room like she'd never left. Mid-30s. Dark brown skin, cropped black hair that hugged her head in sharp precision. She stood at 5'7", lean and built like a fighter. Her uniform was crisp, badge polished, and her sidearm rested with casual ease at her hip. Her eyes scanned the room with tactical speed, then settled on Elias. "You look like hell," she said. arching one brow. I heard someone stopped a dog from getting beat to death in an alley. Figured it had to be you. No one else around here's stupid and noble enough to try that combo. Elias cracked a dry grin. Good to see you too, West. She stepped closer to the exam table, her face shifting when her eyes landed on Valor. There was something careful in her expression, respect, curiosity, and something else. A guarded empathy that she rarely wore in public. That him? She asked. Yeah, Elias replied. I call him Valor. Naya crouched down slowly beside the table, resting one elbow on her knee as she studied the injured shepherd. He was still unconscious, but his breathing had steadied, and his ears twitched faintly with each shift in the air. No tags, no chip. Found in the same neighborhood where 2 other shepherds were attacked this month. Nia murmured. One didn't make it. The other got picked up by animal control but escaped from the shelter 2 weeks ago. Elias watched her carefully. You think it's a pattern? I think it's worse, she said, standing up. People use dogs like this for all kinds of things. Drug runs, loyalty testing, fighting rings. Especially shepherds. They're smart, loyal, and built like tanks. This one, he watched me when I walked in. Not fear. Calculation, like he's trained. Elias nodded slowly. He didn't flinch when I first touched him, didn't growl, but when I bent over him, he braced, like he was waiting for a hit, not fearing it. Conditioned. Naya's jaw tightened. I'll ask around. See if anyone's filed reports for a missing shepherd or claimed to lose one. If someone's trying to find him, we need to be ready. Elias glanced down at Valor. The dog's head barely moved, but his ears had perked again. He was listening. Always listening. I'm going to foster him, Elias said after a moment, at least until he's stable. Naya gave him a long, assessing look, the kind people used when deciding whether someone was acting from strength or from pain. You sure you're up for that? No, Elias admitted quietly, but I think he is. She didn't push. Instead, she stepped over to a side counter, grabbed a sticky note and scribbled down a number. Her personal cell. She left it beside the IV drip, the paper curling slightly at the corners. If anything weird happens, call me directly. No dispatch. She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. By the way, you look better than the last time I saw you. That fog in your eyes, it's not there anymore. She didn't wait for thanks before slipping out the door. Minutes passed. Then came the scent of burnt coffee and cinnamon. Juno reappeared with a tray and 2 mugs, one black, one overloaded with creamer and dusted with cinnamon. He handed Elias the bitter one. Figured you were the tortured black coffee type. Elias took it with a faint chuckle. Guilty. Juno leaned on the wall, his face pale but calm. His eyes flicked to Valor, then to Elias. He gonna make it? Dr. Geller thinks so. I've seen dogs like that, Juno said softly. They don't always trust again, but when they do, they give everything. He paused. Like people, the ones who come back. Elias looked at him. That personal? Juno nodded once. Group home. Left at 15, lived in a bus for a year. Dr. Geller found me sleeping behind the clinic and gave me a job. No questions, just towels and food bowls. I like dogs better than people most days. Elias didn't reply, but his face changed, just slightly. The kind of shift that said something wordless, something grateful. Later, as the clinic dimmed and Valor slept in silence, Elias leaned back in his chair. The dog stirred only once, shifting closer to the sound of Elias breathing. Not flinching, not hiding, just staying. The third night at Elias Monroe's modest adobe-style home in Tucson's Barrio Viejo was unusually still. The desert sky had faded into a soft indigo, stars pricking through the darkness like pinholes in velvet. But something was off. The wind, usually constant, had gone missing. Even the insects were quiet. The stillness wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the walls, thick and expectant. Inside, Elias sat at his kitchen table, the overhead light casting a yellow pool on the worn wood. His shoulders hunched forward over a therapy notebook, half filled with scrawled symbols and reminders meant to anchor his mind. Coping mechanisms, memory cues, things to keep the panic at bay. He traced one of the symbols absently with his finger. His mind wasn't on the notebook. Near his feet, Valor lay curled on the tile floor. The shepherd's breathing had grown steadier, and the swelling around his ribcage had receded. He moved better now, stronger, more alert. But something else had changed too, something deeper than the healing flesh. For 2 nights in a row, Vala had woken at exactly 2:11 a.m., each time with the same sudden, sharp growl. Not barking, not panicking, just watching, always toward the back window. Elias had checked the alley behind the house both times. Nothing, no prints, no scent, no sign of disturbance. Still, tonight, something about the dog's posture was different. Vala rose slowly, not startled, but deliberate. His tail stood stiff, ears forward, head low, like a predator tracking something just out of reach. Elias followed the dog's gaze to the window. The blinds fluttered, not with wind, but movement, subtle, controlled, not natural. Elias didn't hesitate. He slid open the kitchen drawer and pulled out the Glock he kept holstered there, old habits born of real danger. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber with a soft click. Not paranoia. Instinct. The kind you don't lose, even when you want to. Then it came, Vala's bark. Loud, sudden, guttural. The shepherd leapt toward the window, paws slamming against the glass. He snarled, ferocious and unrestrained, nothing like the quiet animal Elias had brought home. A shadow outside shifted. Someone pulled back into the alley. Elias lunged forward and yanked the blinds open. Too late. The figure was already running. A hoodie, a scarf covering the face, coat flapping like wings behind them as they disappeared into the dark. Elias didn't chase. Instead, he stepped outside cautiously. The porch light flicked on, throwing light into the alley's edge. The gravel crunched under his boots as he moved closer, eyes scanning. A trash bin had been nudged out of place. A stack of recyclables was overturned. And then he saw it. At the base of the window frame, jammed between 2 bricks like it had been stabbed there, was a black-handled dagger. Military issue. Tactical. The kind Elias had seen carried by special units in combat zones. Its blade had been driven through a folded piece of paper. He crouched and removed both. The note was short, red block letters. Simple, cold. Stay out of it, Marine. Elias didn't move for a long moment, not out of fear, but recognition. Whoever had done this didn't just know Vala's value. They knew Elias. They wanted silence. The next morning, Elias skipped therapy. Skipped the vet. He called Nia. When her SUV pulled into his driveway, the sun was already scorching the desert dust into shimmering heat waves. She stepped out in plain clothes, black tactical tee, grey utility pants, badge clipped at her hip, sidearm holstered tight. She looked like she was 5 seconds away from a breach. He met her on the porch, handed her a Ziploc bag. Inside were the knife and the note. Found it under the window, he said simply. Guy ran when Vala saw him. Nia's lips thinned as she turned the bag over in her hands. That's not random. No, Elias agreed. That's targeted. She looked down at Vala, who sat alert at Elias's side, ears up, eyes sharp. His fur was thickening again, the sheen of health creeping back in. But the wounds beneath hadn't fully healed. He's not just a lost dog, Nia muttered. Someone trained him. Someone wants him back, or wants him gone. Elias nodded. You said there were other shepherds? Nia pulled out a small leather notebook from her back pocket, flipping through it. 3 in the last 4 months. 1 from a private security firm. 1 from a Phoenix K9 unit, vanished during a raid. 3rd was unregistered, found hurt but escaped animal control before they could ID him. She paused. I think Vala's the 4th. Where does it lead? I did some digging, she said, voice low. There's a place outside Morirana. Officially, it's a training facility for executive protection dogs. But word is they push their animals hard. Some don't come back. Some get sold. Underground stuff, fighting, courier work, smuggling, East Coast buyers mostly. Elias's jaw tensed. You think Vala came from there? I think, she said slowly, he escaped, and now someone's tracking him, which means they found you too. Their conversation was interrupted by the hum of a small white sedan pulling into the driveway. A woman stepped out, holding a tan folder to her chest. She looked young, mid-20s, with cropped black hair, oversized glasses, and a navy blue polo shirt bearing an embroidered badge from the Tucson Rescue Network. Sorry, she called gently. Am I interrupting? Elias took a half-step forward, instinctively shielding the door. You're Rainer Park, she said. Dr. Geller sent me. After you reported the break-in, she added a flag to Vala's medical file. I'm here to check on it. Nia and Elias exchanged a glance before stepping aside. Inside, Rainer moved with quiet precision. She knelt next to Vala and scanned him with a handheld reader. Her movements were calm, practiced, soothing. The dog didn't resist, just watched. No chip, she confirmed. But she leaned closer and parted the fur near Vala's inner thigh. There's a faded tattoo here. That's rare, usually used by military or less-than-legal trainers, the kind who don't want paper trails. That landed hard. Can you get a photo? Naya asked. Already did, Raina replied, rising to her feet. She handed Elias a leash with reinforced stitching. Just in case. He's protective, and someone clearly wants him silenced. Be careful. After she left, Naya lingered near the door. I'm putting in a formal request, she said. We're reopening a case file. Gonna investigate that Morirana facility. Could take a few days to get clearance. Meanwhile, watch your six. Elias looked her in the eye. Always. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat on the couch with Vala near his feet, one hand resting gently on the dog's back. The note sat on the coffee table, a folded threat made of ink and silence. But Elias didn't feel fear. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. Morning in Tucson arrived like a slow, dragging breath. Sunlight bleeding through gauzy clouds, casting soft gold across the cracked sidewalks and heat-warped roofs. At the Copper Canyon Vet Clinic, the day started before the phones rang, and before the waiting room filled with dogs pacing nervously beside their owners. It began in the back room, where Elias Monroe stood beside an exam table, gently stroking Vala's fur. The German shepherd looked better now, his coat cleaner, body steadier, the worst of his wounds dressed and healing. But something deeper still haunted his gaze. He wasn't just recovering, he was remembering. Across the room, Juno was already prepping the DNA kit. The teenager had grown quieter since the break-in, his usual sarcasm traded for a kind of focused stillness. Dark circles under his eyes, hoodie zipped to his chin, he moved with silent urgency. Doctor, Geller pulled some strings, Juno said, gesturing to the sample container. Got the university lab to rush this. We'll have results by tonight. Elias nodded, removed the sterile swab and knelt beside Vala. The dog didn't flinch. When Elias gently lifted his jowl to swab his inner cheek, Vala remained still, as if he trusted the ritual, as if he knew it mattered. Juno sealed the vial and labelled it. You think someone's still looking for him? He asked, his voice lower than usual. Elias's eyes didn't leave Vala. Someone already did, he said quietly, but I don't think they want him back to keep him safe. They want silence. Juno hesitated, then walked toward the back cabinet. He fumbled with a key before pulling out a small, weathered cardboard box. Placing it on the counter, he opened it carefully, like it held something sacred. I wasn't going to say anything, he mumbled, but I think you should see this. Inside was a faded blanket, a tiny collar chewed at the edges, and a photograph, wrinkled, slightly water-stained. It showed a cream-coloured puppy nestled in a young boy's arms. This was Delta, Juno said. Found her outside a liquor store 3 years ago. Barely weaned. I snuck her in here, tried to keep her hidden. He picked up the collar and turned it over. Part of it was scorched, as if exposed to fire. Some guy saw her, had a spider tattoo on his hand, said she was his. I refused to give her up. Next day, clinic windows were smashed. Geller had to pretend Delta ran off, so they wouldn't come back. Elias stared at the burned collar. You think they were connected to Vala? I know it, Juno whispered. Same breed, same look in the eyes. They train them, sell them. Some for protection, some for worse. Elias exhaled through his nose. Why didn't you report it? Juno looked down. No one listens to kids like me, man. I was 16. They just said I made it up. Before Elias could respond, the clinic's landline rang. Juno picked it up, listened for a moment, then handed it to Elias with wide eyes. It's the lab, he said. Elias took the phone. Monroe speaking. A professional female voice on the other end read out the sample ID. We ran your swab through the federal K9 registry. Your dog matches records for unit designation K92V, assigned to the U.S. Marshals Service, Task Force 9, out of San Diego. Elias's hand tightened around the receiver. What was his call sign? Kilo, she said. Presumed KIA, 2 years ago. Narcotics raid. There was an explosion. No body was recovered. They assumed he was dead. Elias closed his eyes, but he wasn't. No, she confirmed. Someone found him and never reported it. He thanked her and hung up. Juno was already watching him. Vala was federal? He asked, stunned. Elias nodded. K9 unit, high-level narcotics enforcement. Officially listed as killed in action. But clearly someone found him after the blast. and didn't want to give him back. Later that afternoon, Elias sat on the porch of the clinic, Valor curled by his feet. The photo of Delta still rested in his jacket pocket. His mind spun, timelines, motives, possibilities. There were too many gaps, too many buried truths, but the path kept leading to one place. That evening, Elias took a drive across town. He didn't tell Naya. He didn't even tell Juno. He headed to South Tucson, where answers lived behind closed doors and questions got you watched. The place he stopped at was a small auto repair shop smeared in sun-faded graffiti. Rusted vans lined the side lot. Inside, the air smelled of oil, sweat, and secrets. The man Elias came for went by Ricky Smokes Delgado, mid-40s, stocky, greasy hair combed back with motor oil, gold rings on every finger. Reputation, fixer of broken things, cars, documents, even lives, if the price was right. Ricky stepped out from the garage bay and noticed Valor first. "That yours now?" he asked, eyes narrowing. Elias nodded. "Yeah. Don't look like no mutt from the pound." "That's because he's not." Ricky leaned on the doorway, arms crossed. "You come here for something?" "I need names," Elias said. "People dealing high-trained dogs. Quiet sales, no records, especially shepherds." Ricky snorted. "Why would I know anything about that?" Elias pulled out a folded envelope and handed it over. Inside, the photo of Valor from the clinic and the note from the break-in. "Because you've moved people who know these dogs." The smile dropped from Ricky's face. He took a long moment, then muttered, "There's a guy. Name's Crowley. Used to train for military contracts. Got discharged. Opened a place near Morirana. Says it's for protection dogs. But too many go missing. No refunds. No returns. You didn't hear that from me." "I didn't," Elias replied, already turning away. That night, Elias returned home and pulled out his notebook. In thick black ink, he wrote a new name at the top of the page. Crowley. Morirana. Below it, he sketched the collar Juno had shown him, then the tattoo Reiner found on Valor's inner thigh. He stared at the drawings, then looked down at the dog sleeping beside him. "Not just a dog," Elias whispered. "You were a soldier, and they used you like a tool." Valor didn't respond. But he stirred, head lifting slightly, inching closer to Elias's side. Out the window, Tucson's sky burned in golden haze. But inside, a quiet resolve was beginning to take root. There would be no more running. Only the truth. The phone rang just past 5 p.m., its digital chime slicing through the hum of the ceiling fan and the low thrum of Valor's steady breathing. Elias glanced at the screen. Unknown number, local area code. He let it ring once more before answering. Monroe. The voice on the other end was smooth, professional, but there was tension underneath, like someone holding back a storm. "Captain Monroe, this is Officer Charles Renner with the Arizona K-9 Recovery Unit. I'm calling regarding the German Shepherd in your care. We've received a flagged alert connected to his identification marks." Elias straightened in his seat. What kind of alert? "He matches a dog registered to a retired handler named Mark Davis out of Flagstaff. Mr. Davis filed an appeal to reopen the case 2 days ago. The system only just updated. He's been looking for his dog since 2021. Elias narrowed his eyes. "Why didn't you contact the local precinct?" "I have a contact at Tucson PD, Detective Naya West." A pause. Then the voice returned. "This is a federal recovery case. Tucson PD isn't cleared yet. We're trying to keep it low-key until confirmation is complete. Look, I understand your concern, but we've been authorized to take custody of the animal for interim housing, just until proper ownership is verified." Elias didn't answer. Something about the man's tone was too clean, too rehearsed, scripted. "To make things easier," the voice continued, "we're asking you to meet at a neutral location. There's a freight depot off Alvernon, near the old rail yard. It's used for temporary field pickups." Elias hung up without responding. He looked at Valor, who met his gaze without blinking. The dog's ears twitched slightly, head tilting. He was listening too. Elias didn't trust the call, but they knew his name. They knew Valor's real identity. If there was even a chance the handler was real, if Valor truly belonged to someone who loved him once, he had to know. But he wouldn't walk in blind. He strapped on his boots, clipped Valor's leash and secured a lightweight tactical belt under his overshirt. A flashlight, a utility knife, a sidearm holstered tight, just in case. The sun was dipping behind the desert hills when he pulled onto the narrow dirt road behind the Tucson freight yard. Abandoned train cars sat in rusted silence, graffiti scarring their flanks. Weeds clawed up through cracked concrete. A black pickup truck sat beside a corrugated metal storage shed. No plates, no markings, no one in sight. Elias parked 20 yards back and left the engine running. "Stay close," he muttered to Valor, stepping out. The dog moved beside him, quiet but alert, tail low, body coiled. From behind the pickup, 2 men emerged. One tall and wiry, skin sunburnt and tight over bone. The other stockier, jacket zipped halfway, one hand buried in his pocket. Neither wore a badge, no uniforms, no transport crate. The tall man smiled, quick, hollow. "You must be Monroe." Elias didn't answer. "We're here for the shepherd." "Show me the paperwork," Elias said, voice flat. The stocky one stepped forward, pulling a folded sheet from his coat pocket. Held it out like bait. Elias didn't take it. Their eyes were too eager, too expectant. Then it happened. The tall one gave a subtle nod. Behind Elias, a third figure moved fast, silent. Something hard cracked against Elias's shoulder, then his ribs. He staggered, throwing a wild elbow backward. Valor lunged, teeth sinking into fabric and possibly flesh. A shout, a stumble. Then the zap of a taser. Elias collapsed, his muscles seized, vision blurred, a veil of static dropped over his senses. He heard Valor snarl again, heard the thud of boots and the sharp yelp of pain. Then a van door slammed, silence. Back at the Copper Canyon clinic, Juno stared at his phone, worry etched into every line of his face. It was 8:17 p.m. He'd texted Elias an hour ago, no reply. Called, no answer. He wasn't the panicking type. He'd survived too much to panic. But this silence wasn't right. It didn't feel like space. It felt like absence. He made a choice. For the first time, he called Detective Nia West directly. Nia was off duty, gym clothes, badge on a dish by the sink. But when Juno said Elias wasn't responding, she was out the door in under 2 minutes. By 8:45, she'd pinged Elias's phone using emergency protocol. The last signal came from Alvernon Road near the freight depot. Still there. Unmoving. She arrived 10 minutes later with backup. Sodium lights cast yellow halos on the dust. Boot prints, tire tracks, drops of blood. She found Elias's phone in the gravel, screen cracked. Beside it, a torn collar. Not Valor's, a decoy. Her gut sank. The warehouse where they took Elias sat cloaked in rust and history. From the outside it looked abandoned, forgotten. But inside, shadows moved. Elias lay on his side, wrists zip-tied, one eye swollen, breathing shallow, not from pain but fury. He'd counted 3 men. 1 had hit him. 2 had restrained him. But the leader, the quiet one, was different. He stood against the far wall near a makeshift office, arms crossed. Crowley. Late 50s. Silver-streaked hair slicked back. Clean boots. Grey vest over a black shirt. He didn't look like someone who trafficked dogs. He looked like someone who signed the contracts and made the rules. Elias said nothing. He knew what this was. In a crate 20 feet away, Valor sat upright, chained at the neck. His body was bleeding again, small gash above the eye, another on his side. But his gaze didn't waver. He was watching, waiting. Crowley stepped forward, a suppressed pistol dangling from his hand like a pointer stick. "You should have left it alone," he said, voice low and clipped with a southern rasp. "That dog wasn't yours to save." Elias didn't respond. Crowley knelt. "You know how much time we put into conditioning him? 2 years of courier runs, obedience, threat assessments. You think he found you by accident?" Still silence. "When assets go rogue, they're eliminated," Crowley continued. "You should have let him die." He stood and called out, "Start the van, we're leaving in 10. Elias moved. He rolled to his knees, breathing hard. "You want him dead?" he rasped. "Fine, but not like this. Let him die on his feet." Crowley paused, considered, then nodded. "Unchain the dog." One of the guards approached Valor's crate. Keys rattled. The chain slipped free. Valor stayed still. Elias shifted his wrists just enough to bring them near his mouth, where a tiny strip of tape clung to his skin. Wrapped inside it, a micro whistle, high frequency, calibrated for K9 recall. He blew, no sound to human ears, but Valor heard it. In a flash he lunged, straight into the guard. A scream tore through the room. Blood splattered the floor. Chaos erupted. Crowley raised his weapon, then a gunshot cracked through the warehouse. His hand jerked sideways. The pistol clattered to the ground. Nia West stormed in, flanked by SWAT. Tactical gear, rifle ready. "Police!" she shouted. "Down now!" Officers swept in. One tackled a guard. Another covered the exit. Valor growled over the man he'd taken down, teeth still bared. Elias rose to his feet, breathless. "Good boy," he whispered. Then, through the door, came Juno. Helmet half on, oversized vest slipping off his shoulder. He froze at the scene. Elias bloodied, Valor still snarling, then exhaled. "You're okay," Elias chuckled hoarsely. "More or less. You're not supposed to be here." "Neither are you," Juno shot back. As officers cuffed Crowley, he glared at Elias, blood on his lips. "You think you saved him? There are more like him. This won't end with me." Naya stood over him. "You're right. It ends with all of you." Outside, as paramedics arrived, Elias refused treatment until Valor was seen first. Maya, the vet on scene, knelt beside the shepherd. "He's lucky," she said. "Wounds clean. He'll make it." Juno stood nearby, eyes wide. "I'm going back to school," he said suddenly. "To do this. Help dogs like him. Maybe train them, like you do." Elias smiled, blood drying on his face. "Then you better start now." The sky over Tucson blushed with the colors of a slow-burning dawn, shifting from deep obsidian to a soft amber that painted the mountains in shades of molten gold. Outside Banner University Medical Center, the cicadas had gone quiet, replaced by the rolling clinks of IV carts and the murmured shuffle of nurses changing shifts. The city, still reeling from the revelations of the raid, was waking to something new, something rare, hope. Inside room 203, Elias Monroe sat upright in a hospital bed. His ribs were wrapped in thick gauze, the bruising now the color of aged wine. One arm rested in a cooling cuff, the other held a letter, its handwriting shaky but clear. His face, lined with pain and healing, wore a quiet astonishment, a look rarely seen since Fallujah. The letter had come from a retired Army sergeant in Colorado Springs. It read simply, "I lost my own canine partner in Kandahar. His name was Rain. What you did for that dog, for all of them, they don't teach that in training. They teach obedience. You showed loyalty. Thank you, Marine." Elias swallowed hard. Beside the bed, a stack of other letters, some typed, others scribbled in crayon or cursive from elderly hands, told similar stories. Letters from across the country. Some spoke of lost dogs, others of healing. All of them believed in what he and Valor had done. On a padded mat at the foot of the bed, Valor lay resting. His fur had been cleaned, the gash above his eye neatly stitched by Maya, the gentle vet who had called him a hero with 4 legs. His eyes remained sharp, though his body was still and patient. He didn't sleep, not fully. He listened. The door creaked open. Nia West stepped in, now in civilian clothes, a tan blouse, dark jeans, and a slight smile tugging at the edge of her lips. Her usually clipped hair was down in soft waves. In one hand, she held a small box wrapped in blue velvet ribbon. "You look like hell," she said lightly. "I feel worse," Elias replied, voice rough but warm. She crossed the room and handed him the box. "From the mayor's office, and a few folks with very shiny shoes," Elias opened it slowly. Inside was a bronze medallion, engraved with the Arizona state seal and threaded with a red, white, and navy ribbon. A plaque beneath read, "Valor, Service Dog of the Year 2025. He glanced at Valor, who blinked once, unimpressed. "Guess that makes you famous," Elias muttered. "Not just him," Nia added. "You've got media requests lined up, a video message from the governor, and an offer from the police K9 division." Elias raised an eyebrow. "They want you for consulting," she clarified. "Training, rehab work with retired service dogs. You wouldn't have to leave Tucson. You could keep drinking that terrible coffee you love." Elias looked toward the window where sunlight crept across the sill. "I never thought I'd wear a badge again," he said. "You won't," Nia smirked. "Just a name tag, and maybe a vest that says, 'Do not pet.'" They both laughed, low and real, the kind that loosened something tight inside. A knock at the door. Maya entered, wearing a blue scrub top with cartoon dogs and her hair pulled back into a messy ponytail streaked with grey. She carried a clipboard and a small cooler. "I figured you'd be awake," she said. "Got his next dose and a few clinic updates." Elias nodded. "He healing all right?" "Better than expected," she said, kneeling beside Valor and rubbing his ear. He licked her hand in return. "He's resilient. You both are." As she administered the shot, she added, "You know, I've been working rescue for 20 years. I've seen dogs broken, afraid of shadows. But this one, he remembers love. That's why he survived." Her voice wavered, just for a second. before she cleared her throat and stood. "Just thought you should know." Moments later, another knock. Juno stepped inside, nervous energy radiating from every part of him. His curls were messier than usual, and his hoodie looked like it had been slept in. He stood awkwardly at the door, hands buried in his pockets. "I heard visitors were allowed now," he said. "Come in, kid," Elias said. "You all right?" Juno nodded. "Yeah, just everyone's talking about you two. They mentioned you in homeroom this morning." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Really? What'd they say?" "That heroes don't always wear uniforms," Juno replied, smiling. "Sometimes they bark." That earned a chuckle from both Elias and Naya. Juno pulled a folded piece of paper from his hoodie and handed it over. "I drew this. It's dumb, but I wanted to say thanks." Elias opened it. A pencil sketch. Rough lines, but drawn with care. It showed Elias kneeling, one hand resting on Vala's head. Behind them, the faint outline of a desert sun. Elias blinked hard. "This isn't dumb," he said softly. "This is art." Juno's voice turned serious. "I want to be like you. Help animals. Protect them. I don't know how yet, but I will." "You already started," Elias said. Vala nudged Juno's hand, licking his fingers gently. Outside, a soft cheer rose. Elias turned his head toward the window. A crowd had gathered near the entrance, neighbors, veterans, children. Some held dogs, some held signs. All of them were clapping. He looked at Nia. "Is this for us?" "Looks like it." He stood slowly, wincing but upright. "Let's not keep them waiting." A few months later, the sun crept over the freshly painted sign that arched above the gates of a once-forgotten warehouse. Now it gleamed. The Valor Center, sanctuary for the abandoned and brave. Ivy curled along the stucco walls. Wind chimes swayed on the porch. In the training yard, dogs chased bulls with tails high like banners of survival. Elias stood just outside the gate, wearing a beige button-up, worn boots, and a sun-bleached hat. At his side Vala sat, his coat full, his stance calm, the nervous flinch long gone. A folding podium stood beneath a canvas awning. Chairs filled the yard, locals, vets, rescue workers, children. Near the front, Juno stood beside Naya, straightening the collar of his staff polo. He was taller now, still slender, still freckled, but his voice held weight. Naya too had changed, her stance still firm, but her blouse loose, her hair now hanging in soft waves. As the ceremony began, the mayor gave a brief speech on second chances. Applause rippled through the crowd. Then Elias stepped forward. He adjusted the mic, cleared his throat. "1 year ago, I woke up in a hospital bed, cracked ribs, a concussion, and a German shepherd beside me who'd nearly died saving me. He had no home, no past anyone wanted to claim. Scars that told stories no one wanted to hear. But he wasn't broken. He was waiting for someone to believe in him. I thought I was the one rescuing him, but truth is, he rescued me." He paused, glancing down at Vala. "And now, because of him, we have this place. Not just a shelter, a sanctuary, for dogs like him, for kids like Juno, for anyone who believes redemption is real, even if it barks." The crowd clapped, some wiped their eyes. Later, guests toured the facility. Wide kennels, shade structures, a small clinic, murals of dogs and humans healing side by side. In a quiet corner stood an arch, Vala's garden. Beneath it, small stone markers bore names of dogs who didn't make it, but who died loved. Juno tended the flowers every morning. By late afternoon, the crowd faded. Elias sat on the porch steps, sun tea in hand, Vala at his side. Juno approached, 2 new rescues trailing behind, a 3-legged mutt and a Doberman missing an ear. "They're settling in," Juno said. "The golden one let me touch his paw." "You've got a gift," Elias replied, "better than mine ever was." "I learned from you," Juno said. Naya stepped over. "We've had 4 adoption applications already," she smiled, "from people who used to say they didn't trust rescues." Elias nodded. "It starts small." Then, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, he walked to the front gate. Vala followed. Together they stood and watched the dogs run, young, old, broken, healing. Their barks were no longer fear, they were freedom. Juno raised his camera and captured the moment. Elias and Vala, backs to the lens, facing a future they built together. Sometimes saving a life starts with a bark. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. He sends them with 4 legs and a broken past.